Hello, everyone, and welcome to this segment of Industry Insights by G2, which features hot takes and actionable advice from business leaders all around the world. This is a professional spotlight with Kevin Indig, a growth advisor specializing in SEO and product-led growth strategies for SaaS companies, marketplaces, and large e-commerce businesses. My name is Alexandra Vasquez. I am a senior content marketing specialist here at G2. And I'm so excited to share this interview with you all and to speak with you today, Kevin. Thank you so much for your time.
Thanks for having me.
Amazing. So today, Kevin and I will be discussing his journey to becoming a professional SEO advisor, how current SEO trends are affecting companies in the space, and what the future of SEO looks like with the rise of AI. But before we get into that, how about we do some icebreaker questions and warm us up a little bit?
Sounds good.
All right. So, in the theme of our newsletter, G2T, I would love to open with a pretty easy one. What is your favorite beverage?
Certainly coffee. I'm a bit of a coffee snob. I grind my own beans every morning and I do pour overs. And I got spoiled by living in San Francisco for a couple of years, falling in love with Phil's coffee. And so that's what I'm having every morning.
Amazing. You're in good company. I will say, it comes at no surprise that that's probably the most popular answer we get. Um, and then the next question, getting a little bit more professional here. What was your very first job?
My very first job was at 14 years in a hospital kitchen, and my job was to clean pots and pans and empty the dishwasher, which is not a normal dishwasher. It's like a large industrial dishwasher. It's very grounding. I'm going to say that was really good for me. I worked that on the weekends for about a year, and then I had enough. But ever since, I basically worked.
Amazing. That's a really interesting place to start. I'm excited to hear how that got you here. Um, Next warm-up question. What are some of your best time management hacks?
Yeah, it's funny because I have the ability and drive to get really obsessed with those kind of like frameworks. And I think one of the like there were two or three game changers for me. One is to just basically add 50% of time to everything. So any task that I do, whenever I estimate or project how long it could take, I just add a blank 50%. Any meeting, I'll have a buffer before and after. And any kind of commitment I make, I kind of try to reduce in half. So that kind of, very broad approach has been pretty good for me. The other thing is just thinking about and going really deep on why I make certain commitments. I'm ambitious, I have a drive, and that often leads me to overcommit, and that gets me into time crunches. So, working with business coaches, for example, or coaches in general, on why do I have that urge to make these commitments, what I'm trying to get to, that has been really helpful. And then the third thing is every year. Right now is actually a really good time because this year is coming to an end. But every year I'm making a list of goals and I try to prioritize my time to achieve these goals. So whenever something comes out of nowhere that seems that excites me, I always go through that list. Like, does it actually make sense for my goals or is it just something that I'm excited about in the moment?
Amazing. Yeah, I'm also a big proponent of making sure you have that time in between meetings to really like collect yourself. I feel like jumping from one to the next, it's like it feels like it's all just one giant meeting, to be honest, sometimes. So
Yes.
I'm a big fan of that one. Now, G2 is all about software. So I gotta ask, what is your favorite software in your current tech stack?
Right now, it has to be Notion. I Notion really is my second brain. I take all of my meeting notes. I manage all my tasks. I have a huge library of notes for all sorts of things, whether it's some notes from a podcast or events I go to, articles I read, templates that I create in my work, whatever it is, it really lives on Notion.
Amazing, amazing. And then we'll close out some of these warm-up questions with getting a little bit more real. It's not always sunshine and rainbows. So, what kind of problems at work make you just want to like throw the laptop out the window? You're done.
So being completely honest, um, I there's a very particular kind of patience that I really don't have. And for example, when I get stuck with a complex Google Sheet formula or some code and like tinkering on that and trying to solve it, that I can like literally feel my body heating up. And then there's other types of problems that require a certain type of patience that don't bother me at all. So it's that kind of tinkering with small little details that is very frustrating that drives me up the wall.
Totally agree. I think it's like almost triggering because it kind of reminds you of school. So it's like feels like you're back at school trying to solve a problem and you're like, ah.
Very
So
much.
totally relate. And now that we're all warmed up, I would love to jump into kind of the meat of the conversation, jumping in a little bit more into your professional journey. So you've worked with some pretty big names like Atlassian, Reddit, Shopify, and not to toot our own horn, but also G2. So tell us a little bit about what brought you into SEO and what inspired you to move from in-house roles to becoming your own professional advisor.
Yeah, yeah. It's been an interesting journey. It started very much with computer games. As a teenager, as a kid, I basically grew up when broadband internet became accessible. That enabled online gaming. I was huge into games in general. And at some point, I was playing with friends in a group, and at some point we needed a website. And for some reason, I became the guy to figure out how to build a website. I taught myself HTML and CSS, a little bit of Photoshop, and I built this really, really poor, bad website, but it was just enough for us to apply to tournaments that we wanted to play in. And I got fascinated with that. And so I built more websites. I sold some for like pocket change money. But I just got into this world and like teaching this to myself exposed me to forums back in the day. Now come back with Reddit. And eventually I found a thread about SEO and it was very hacky back in the day, a lot of dark magic, it wasn't this established customer acquisition channel that is today. And so anyway, I got deep. I went deep down the rabbit hole, and I learned a bit about SEO. Fast forward, I went to so I grew up in Germany. I went to college in Germany, and after college, I went to work for a Swiss bank, and I thought I wanted to get into banking and wealth management. And then quickly realized this is not the right way to go. And then for some reason, I landed a job as a trainee in an SEO agency in Germany. And that agency was a career booster, was very enterprise focused, they had very seasoned consultants. They taught me a lot, some things that I still use today. And that's when things took off. So it started with computer games, and I think it was just driven by deep curiosity and kind of a willingness to learn, but also a fair share amount of luck. Because back then, as I mentioned, SEO was very black hat, very hacky. It wasn't this established thing at all. And so my luck was that first of all, I had great mentors, and second of all, this turned into a big industry, and that enabled me to then have a career.
Amazing. Yeah, I love those stories of where it kind of comes at you and you didn't expect it. And you just like accidentally stumble upon what's going to be your life for the rest of your career. So those kind of stories are always super interesting to me. But fast forwarding hardcore to actually present day, I'd love to ask you a little bit more about what's going on in the industry right now. So you have advisory experience across startups and bigger companies, so you kind of have a widespread view of what's going on. What do you see as the biggest trends in SEO today, and how have these trends changed how businesses are approaching organic growth?
It's a great question and comes at a good time because there are many shifts right now across different areas of SEO. Of course, there's AI, right? That's a huge one. And it is real. It's not a hype. It's a real actual change affecting lots of businesses. And the common theme really is uncertainty. Everybody wonders, how is this going to affect us? Is it going to be, is this going to grow the pie? Is this going to shrink the pie? It certainly redefines the playing field with new rules. And yet at the same time, it really is a new playing field because AI in SEO, mostly in the form of Google's AI overviews, which are these AI answers at the very top of the search results, they really change search as in so far that they give the answer right away to people and mostly make it redundant to click through to websites. I would say that is the biggest change right now. And we're in that transition phase. We've been in that since May, since Google launched these AI overviews. And it's going to take a while until, quote unquote, the dust settles. We're going to understand what the new playbook looks like and we can execute against it. So we're in that weird transition phase. And it's not just AI overviews, it's also AI tool usage in general, right? Obviously, ChatGPT, Perplexity, Gemini, these AI chatbots or LLMs, they also change search and so far that people can go there. They have a much cleaner interface. There's no ads or other things that distract them, and they can very quickly get to an answer, sometimes at the first try and sometimes with a couple of tries, right? So it's not just Google changing because of AI, it's also consumer behavior changing because of AI. And there are studies showing that people use ChatGPT as a replacement of search about 17% of the time. Um, but that is growing. Um, but then there are other changes as well on the SEO side that are being masked a little bit by this AI change. One of them is in Google Shopping. So e-commerce is undergoing a huge change because Google is displaying more products in search instead of linking out to websites. So Google is kind of becoming the new category page for e-commerce. And that obviously is a huge shift for SEO or for companies doing SEO in e-commerce because it now means they need to change their focus from category pages, from optimizing category pages on their own domains to optimizing product pages. And the third shift, I mean, out of many, is probably that Google shows more uncommercial content in the search results, mostly embodied by Reddit, but also other forums, Quora, a couple of smaller, more specialized forums. So this trend of forums in the search results is a huge one. Reddit has now become probably one of the top three websites in terms of size in the US. And it's a symbol for Google wanting to show more content from humans in this AI transition phase, but also humans wanting more conversations and more answers from other actual humans. So interesting shift. Reddit's obviously uncommercialized, right? Most Google search results that you go to, they're either publishers selling ads, they're affiliates, or sometimes they're companies, but they all have an incentive to sell something. And it seems that Google wants more of a counterbalance by showing Reddit and other forum results more prominently. So I would say these are three massive shifts that cause a lot of noise and that make it hard for companies to find the right playbook and footing at the moment.
Yeah, absolutely. And touching a little bit more on whatever Google is up to these days at this point, it's hard to keep up. If you're on SEO TikTok or if you're in the industry and you log on LinkedIn once every little bit, you'll see some SEO experts freaking out about whatever the new algorithm drop is. So every search engine, particularly Google, is always updating their algorithms. So, from your experience, how can companies prepare for and respond to changes to maintain SEO rankings and organic growth?
Yeah. I also love that question because it's been a real challenge. Google updates are the number one risk for organic traffic, the number one risk. And even very seasoned, I would say, quote unquote, very white hat companies, meaning those that don't engage into any aggressive tactics, even they get affected by core algorithm updates. So there is no perfect insurance against it, but there are a couple of approaches that you can do to minimize your risk of being hit by a Google update. One is to have really good technical hygiene, I would say. There are certain things that increase your risk of being hit by a Google update, like having lots of 404 pages on your domain, having other types of errors, and just in general, wasting Google's crawl budget, right? So even Google's resources are limited. And if they encounter a lot of quote unquote technical waste on your site, they might decide to come by less often, which typically means that you're being parked in a spot that is typically reserved for domains that are, there's something going on, and that makes you more likely to be hit by a Google update. The other stuff is really about content and engagement, and I would say that's the biggest factor here. So when we talk about content, we're talking about mostly text and maybe videos on pages. And the number one challenge is it's not even that the quality is low. That is a challenge, but it's not even the number one challenge. The biggest thing is that a lot of companies publish content and then they forget about it. And so the impact of that is that after a while, first of all, you have this whole body of content that is outdated and needs maintenance. And the other thing is that as you publish more content, gains are harder to make because new content slowly ramps up with organic traffic while older content decays. And you have that spinning wheels effect where you plateau. So going back to old content, cleaning that up and maintaining it, refreshing it, whatever word you have for it, that has really helped. And then the third is engagement. Lots of domains that I see being impacted by Google updates, they have a significant amount of pages on their domain that have relatively low engagement in the form of users don't take any action when they land on the page, or users bounce very quickly because, for example, they don't find the answer they're looking for, or maybe the design is really outdated, or the user experience is poor. Maybe it's poor in mobile. So engagement, tech SEO, content, those are kind of the three buckets you want to look at when you get affected by an algorithm update on a regular basis.
Amazing. Yeah. I mean, I'm really intrigued, especially because, like I mentioned earlier, you have a really widespread expertise. You've worked with companies of such different sizes and in different levels of where they are as far as building their companies. And I would love to talk a little bit more about your mentorship with startups and SEO, especially going off of, optimizing after algorithm changes, AI. How do small companies like this face SEO challenges like this? What kind of unique challenges do you help them deal with, and how can they compete with larger companies to make sure that they are staying up to date and staying relevant?
When it comes to startups, there are two types of challenges. One type, and that's the most spread one, is just simply a lack of resources. Startups are by definition resource constrained, and most companies will scale SEO with content that they create themselves. And that often means they need to either outsource content creation to freelancers or agencies, which they usually don't have the money for, or they need to hire writers in-house, which also they usually don't have the capacity or money for, right? So that challenge, how do we create content to drive SEO traffic? And how can we make it really, really good? That is a challenge that applies to most startups. The second one is reserved for a small amount of companies that have that I call aggregators that have usually user-generated content to scale their organic traffic, or sometimes an inventory. So inventory could be some, think about maybe DoorDash, right? Their inventory is restaurants, maybe restaurants by city. And so that's what I would call an inventory. Um, Most companies don't operate in these spaces, but in that case, it's much more a challenge of getting more inventory to the marketplace, technical SEO, and then really good product management to provide a good user experience when people come to these pages. But again, that's maybe 10% of companies, 90%, they have to figure out how to create content at a very high quality and to create it consistently to drive organic traffic. And so we already spoke about AI. AI certainly is an enabler and accelerator of content creation. And I've worked with a couple of companies who are able to create a lot of volume of high quality content with AI, but always keeping a human in the loop, always having somebody who deeply knows the topic to look at the output of AI, edit it, make it good, and then sprinkle just a little bit of human on top.
Yeah, absolutely. And that's a perfect segue to my next question, because obviously we couldn't leave that quick mention of AI at the beginning of the video and leave it at that. We got to jump into it a little bit more because I mean, it's on the top of everybody's mind. And you've mentioned a little bit about how companies are leveraging AI with SEO, but I'd love to also talk about the flip side of that. What kind of pitfalls and challenges are you seeing companies face as a result of AI machine learning entering the space, and what should they be aware of?
Yeah, there are really two. One is to be lazy um and not making the content or the AI content really good. So there's obviously, there's a lazy approach to this where you just go to ChatGPT, you enter maybe a one sentence prompt, and then you just take that and put it on your website. I would really caution against that. The way that this could look much better is you spend a lot of time with prompt engineering. You really get it right. The prompts that I develop with companies, they're typically 500 to 800 words long. They're really in depth. They very much specify the different sections of the content. And most importantly, they're often paired with some sort of a data source from the company. Sometimes it's product data, sometimes it's um, publicly available data sets. And sometimes it's just a couple of examples of what really good content looks like. But you need to be very specific with AI. You need to guide it in the right direction. You need to show it what good looks like, even though these models are getting a lot better. So that's the first pitfall is being lazy and having a lot of bad content on your site. The second one is to publish too much content too quickly. There are behaviors that Google looks after where if for example you publish 1,000 articles tomorrow generated with AI, Google will be very skeptical about this, and it will take some time for Google to find all of these articles, crawl them, render them, understand them, rank them. And the challenge is that when domains or when companies are too aggressive, their engine literally cannot handle it. Meaning their domain is not authoritative enough, strong enough yet to carry a massive expansion of lots of pages very quickly, right? So if you grow your domain by say, and this is not a scientific value, this is more anecdotal, but if you grow it from like 1 to 3% every week in terms of the number of pages, that's usually a very organic, natural pace. If you grow it by 50% week over week, that is often too much for Google to handle. And as a result, you'll often not get the returns that you're looking for. So, what you want to do instead is you want to progressively, slowly add new pages to your domain. And the perfect limiter for you is to just set a very high bar of quality for the content that goes out. The heuristic that I like to use, or the challenging question, is to ask yourself, how can you make this piece of content the best in the world? If you want to write about a topic, what would it take for other people to look at that and say, wow, I don't think there's anything better than this? That's the type of bar you need. Because if you think about it, Google is incredibly competitive and it is a zero-sum game, meaning there is a clear winner, there are many losers. It is not a winner, like everybody's a winner type of game. And so you have to set an incredibly high bar, and pairing that with AI typically leads to the outcome that you actually want from AI.
Yeah, absolutely. And I'd love to close out with a bit of a forward-thinking question. And I know this question might be a little tough because SEO is constantly changing, and I'm sure it's very hard to predict being so deep into the industry. But I'd love to ask you, from your perspective, what you see as the future of SEO in the next 5 to 10 years, and how can companies future-proof their strategies in anticipation of whatever's coming?
Yeah, so as I mentioned earlier, this shift is still going on and it will take probably a couple more years to settle. And the way that it looks right now is that it seems that search is really becoming more of an engagement model. So to date, or maybe up until a year ago, search has been all about sending clicks to other websites where people can find the answer. That is now changing for people getting the answer right away. And people will always, I think, click through to websites, but that volume is going to drop tremendously. And as a result, the traffic that still arrives to websites is going to be much more qualified and of much higher value because people have probably done a couple of rounds on ChatGPT and Co. or maybe Google AI overviews. They just got most of their questions answered. They have a really good idea of what they want. And now they're in the last few steps before making a purchase. And I think that's the type of traffic that will still arrive at websites. But the challenge is that, again, it's much lower volume. So we have to reset our expectations of traffic versus revenue. And two, we're not getting as much signal anymore of what happens on our website. So today, we have a lot of content on our sites, and traffic to that content also helps us understand somewhat what people are interested in, what questions they have, and what they're curious about. A lot of that is going to go away. Now, there is a chance that LLMs will give us new analytics and insights tools, or that we will gather these insights by advertising on LLMs. For example, Perplexity is now launching ads on a CPM basis. And I assume that they will give us some insights about the return on these ads, maybe impressions, maybe clicks, and we can use that to get a high level idea of what people search on Perplexity and their user behavior in Perplexity, which then allows us to maybe reverse engineer the quote unquote funnel or the consumer purchase journey. So we're going to lose some insights, but as a trade-off, we're going to get more qualified traffic. And the big challenge then is going to be, okay, if we have less activity on our website that we can control, how can we be visible in LLMs? That's going to be a new playbook. And how can we insert ourselves into the set of choices that people have when they want to do a purchase as early on as possible? So those are the challenges, and how to solve them. We'll have to figure that out over the next couple of years.
Yeah, absolutely. And that is no easy feat. I can tell that that's definitely going to be a tall order. But that is my last question. And that wraps up our professional spotlight with Kevin Indig, SEO expert and professional advisor. For more industry insights content like this, check out our blog at learn.g2.com/tag/industry insights. See you next time. And thank you so much again for your time, Kevin.
Appreciate you having me. Thank you so much.